Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Agent Nemitz here. We are starting a brand new series today. I am joined today by none other than my father, Dr. Nemo, Paul Nemitz, whatever you want to call him in the comments down below. Yeah, those are the two names he goes by, so only those two will work. We're here today, as I'm sure you know from the title and the thumbnail, breaking down She-Hulk Episode 1. Yeah. This is going to be a 9-episode series. I haven't covered anything as far as when it comes to trailers, nothing like that. We're just hopping right into this now, and we're going to keep this series going down the road. But this is our very first episode, We're beginning it right here. I'm excited to be here. I'm glad you're here with me. It's going to be a fun time.
It's going to be great.
So let's hop into what happened in this episode.
Man. Hey, I got an idea.
Yeah.
Why don't we summarize what happened on the show itself?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we start out, great intro. You know, you got your Marvel Universe intro. It's beautiful. Then, bam, here's this lawyer. You know, nice looking young lawyer in her office, kind of talking it out with some colleagues. Then they bust into, she's kind of arguing a point about having responsibility. It seemed like she was talking about, you know, probably superheroes and having responsibility to not ruin things. Then it seemed like her secretary says, "Hey, are you going to Hulk out?" And she stops. The lady walks out the door. She's in her office alone, turns around and says, "I got to explain this."
Fourth wall break.
Yep.
Right off the bat.
Yep. And she goes into her backstory. Mm-hmm. Her and Bruce find out they're cousins. They're on the road, driving in a car. He has this apparatus on his arm. He explains, it's to help my arm get better. Because, you know, he fried his arm when he tried to take all that gamma. And so he's trying to heal it up, and it did. It was getting healed, but it had this apparatus, and he was just like a human being. And so they go on, and all of a sudden this ship comes flying in front of him. Car crash.
Yeah.
He's stuck. She gets out, and she goes over, gets his door off, pulls him out, and he's kind of laying on top of her, and he drips some blood.
Because he's not hulked out. He's still human.
Yep. And he drips blood on her. And it gets in her bloodstream because she had a cut. Mm-hmm. Then all of a sudden, bam, she's Hulk. She goes into green mode, goes crazy. Help me out here. What's the next step?
She runs off into the woods, and then next we see it's nighttime, so she must have blacked out or something.
Yes.
Goes into a bar. A bunch of stuff ends up happening. She calls Bruce, a bunch of stuff. And then she wakes up. She gets blacked out again. She wakes up in a nice little beach vacation home. It's real nice and swanky. She goes down in the basement. Bruce is down there, and he's back in Hulk form. And so then just like a bunch of explanation as to what's going on.
She didn't even recollect that she was a Hulk.
Right, exactly.
She did not remember it. So it was like and she was normal at that point.
Yeah. And
so Bruce says to her, "Hey, you had a lethal dose of radiation because I drip blood on you." Mm. She was like, "What?" and freaked out. Mm. And then all of a sudden they go on, and she's like, anyways, they explain everything. Yeah. And they go on. He's like, "Here's a manual." Hands her a manual of everything he's learned about being a Hulk over the last 20 years. Yeah. And she's like, "What's this? I just want to go back to my regular life. I don't want to have anything to do with this." And he's like, "No, you're a superhero now." She's like, "No, I'm not. I'm going to figure this out." So they start kind of arguing about that. He starts walking her through being a Hulk.
Training montage.
Then a couple days go by, and an epic fight scene. I'm glazing. Yeah. Epic fight scene. Then they end up in this place. And it's something that Tony and Bruce built together. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so they're there. He's kind of talking to her about that. Then they go, and she's like, "I'm out of here." And he's like, "I understand." And go ahead. And she takes off. She goes back to the real world, and she's normal. She looks normal. She can control it. She's back as a lawyer. She's in the courtroom, which she was talking about at first. They're there. And some major stuff happens.
Yeah. So that's kind of a summary of what happened in the episode. Next, we are going to dive into Easter eggs, details, stuff you might have missed. And if we skip anything, leave it in the comments down below. We'd love to see what you spotted that we did not spot. But let's head into Easter egg and total scene-by-scene breakdown. All right, so like we said, it starts out with the Marvel title card. We're all used to it. It all starts out the same, but of course, it's changed a couple little scenes in the intro spot. It's super cool. The main change that I noticed was they had Jane Foster Thor. We're not going to do any spoilers for that movie, but they had Jane Foster Thor in right where Rocket Raccoon was previously, but it was her when we first see her in the trailer and when we first see her in the movie. We see her right there. It's super cool. See her powered up. There's a couple other changes in there as well, but that's the main change.
Mm-hmm. And if you haven't saw that movie, go see it.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then we start out with like we said, what feels like a fourth wall break because it's just bam right in on her face, and she's talking right to the camera about kind of like and same verbiage as like with great power. Do they have a responsibility to do this? Yeah, it sounds very Spider-Man-esque, like it's talking great power, great responsibility, but different. Same kind of verbiage, just slightly different, and it totally sets a tone for what this series is going to be and her inner conflict as how she's super powered, but does she have a responsibility to be a hero or not really? Yeah, I feel like that's totally going to be the whole like core inner fight for her in this whole series. It was in this episode, and it was right at the beginning. They told us what it was going to be like in this whole series, so that was kind of cool.
It's true, and I think Bruce, he tries his best to try to explain that to her, and because he's been through it for 20 years, experienced it, but she just doesn't want to listen. Right, she knows better. And she just doesn't even want to hear it. She doesn't want to hear about any of it. She don't want to have anything to do with being a superhero. Totally. None of it. So it's an interesting situation.
Mm-hmm. So then, like I said, it feels like a fourth wall break, but then it kind of zooms out and it's her giving her closing argument to whatever case they're working on right now. It's her closing argument. She's telling it to the other lawyers involved in the case and all that. And actually one of them is her like quote unquote best friend. It's the paralegal in the case, a coworker, and then the other guy is a coworker who's also another lawyer. And actually he's someone from the comics. His name is Dennis Bukowski in the comics. And actually in the comics, he looks like he's like blonde hair, always has glasses and a gold chain on, kind of like the Chad guy, like a real wiener type dude, and you kind of get he does seem like that in this show just a little bit, kind of always like, are you sure you don't want me to give this closing argument? Are you sure about this? Sure about it? He always is like second guessing her. It's kind of dumb.
Almost putting her down as a person.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's really dumb. But so we get introduced to those characters right off the bat, as well as She-Hulk Jennifer Walters. So that's really cool. And of course, all this is taking place over in California. Usually the MCU, everything beyond like Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, even most of Iron Man 3, that takes place in California. But usually in the MCU, we're over in like New York. I mean, that's where the Battle of New York, Avengers happened. That was where Thanos and all that was in upstate New York, or things have been in Wakanda. Of course, now we've kind of been shifting. The Ant-Man movies were over in San Francisco. Shang-Chi was over there. So we've kind of been shifting from the East Coast of the United States over to the West Coast. And that's where this totally takes place, in California. And in Jennifer Walters' office, we see UCLA stuff. We even see her 2 degrees hanging up on the wall, UCLA books and paraphernalia. So clearly she went to UCLA for her law degree. And so that's really cool to find out. And that's where this show takes place. All right, so she is actually the deputy district attorney, which if you go and look that up under the hierarchy of how the whole law divisions and stuff work, that is like a couple levels under the official district attorney. She is the deputy district attorney for probably the state, or probably for California, or maybe even a specific area in Hollywood, California. But yeah, so, and then the trial that she is going up against, which they kind of mention like a little bit, it's GLKH, which stands for Goodman, Lieber, Kurtzberg, and Holloway. Now, those first 3 names are writers and artists and like originators of the Marvel comics. Goodman is an artist, the last name of an artist. Lieber is Stan Lee's actual last name. That's where he gets Lieber. And Kurtzberg is Jack Kirby's real last name. So that's like the origin of Marvel Comics. They kind of pulled from their names and put that in there. So it's kind of a cool callback to them. And then Holloway is the actual guy who is the owner of the company who she is doing the trial against, that she's preparing to give the closing argument for. So this is like a pretty big company that they're going against. And actually, the Holloway guy is straight from the comics. It's actually who She-Hulk works for in the comics. And we've seen him in the trailer for the movie. She ends up working for some superhero law division under this company that he is in charge of. So in the comics, he's kind of like a guy who likes to do a lot of tests, throw a lot of tests at his employees, specifically She-Hulk. And so this trial could even be just this whole big like test trial to see who Jennifer Walters really is and maybe hire her in the future, because she is Hulk's cousin. She's Bruce Banner's cousin. He could be looking at her just because of that, not even knowing, oh, she's like a Hulk.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting information. So then, like my dad said, she goes and they're about to leave. She closes the door and she actually does break the fourth wall. And she starts talking directly to us through the camera and is like, yeah, I'm a Hulk. She mentioned it. You want to know all about it. I know how this works. This is a law show, but you're not going to focus on that until you learn how I'm actually a Hulk. So, bam, then backstory. She starts kind of narrating at the beginning, but then it just goes into it. And total backstory at how she got her powers. So it's her and her cousin Bruce, Hulk as we know him, driving in a car, probably going on vacation somewhere. We don't know where. They're talking, chatting about a bunch of theories with Captain America. And then all of a sudden, a ship, which is the Grandmaster's ship that they took from him, from the Grandmaster in Thor Ragnarok. It's the same type of ship. I don't know if it's the same ship. Same type of ship. And that ship is a Sicarian Class A Courier. That is the official name. Hulk ends up saying it later in the episode, but that is the official ship. Same exact ship that we've seen before. So we know what ship it is, but who is inside? Huh. Even Hulk talks about it later. I know, I gotta figure out what all that's about. Who is it? I've seen a bunch of theories. Nobody knows for sure, obviously, but in the comics, Hulk has a very similar storyline to what we've seen. He gets World War Hulk comics. He goes to Sakaar and becomes a champion, and then he ends up having a family in the comics. Long story short, he ends up having a son. So is that Hulk's son, Scar?
Oh.
Maybe. That's a theory. Then another theory, if it's the same ship that the Grandmaster had, is it the Grandmaster who put a bounty on Hulk's head and is looking for him?
True.
Looking for his champion? Looking for the guy who betrayed him? I don't know. Hopefully we find out in future episodes. But these are just a couple theories I like throwing out there in the middle of this.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the middle of them talking, She-Hulk says, here, you're hungry, have some Cheetos. And he's like, you got some chopsticks in these Cheetos. Now that's actually a callback to Oscar Isaac, the man who plays Poe Dameron in the Star Wars universe, but then also, more recently, Moon Knight in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There was a picture that went viral of him eating Cheetos with chopsticks not to get the dust on his fingers. So that's kind of a callback, a meta callback to him. And he was like, this is pretty clever. And she goes, yeah, you're not the only smart one in the family. So it's kind of a funny moment. And then also we see Hulk has in what he calls an inhibitor on his arm. It's keeping him human and not in smart Hulk or Hulk form. It's keeping him human, and he still has his arm in the sling, just like we saw him last in the end of Shang-Chi. So this also timelines the movie for us, or the show. This show takes place, or at least this part of the show, takes place right after the post-credit scene in Shang-Chi, where we see Hulk and Captain Marvel and Rhodey and Wong talking to Shang-Chi about the 10 Rings. And so this is right after that. So it's actually right before Miss Marvel. That show takes place in like 2025. So this is 2024 when this takes place, right after Shang-Chi, before Miss Marvel. So then after the ship shows up, they swerve off the road to avoid hitting it, causing a big car accident, not a one-car accident. They roll down a hill. They're upside down. She got out of the car really easily, but Bruce was knocked out and still in human form, like we mentioned.
Yes.
They're both kind of bloody, got some cuts, and she goes and gets the seatbelt off him, opens the door, pulls him out, and then he finally wakes up and is like, no, my blood, watch out. And we see some blood drip right in the cut on her arm. And then you see it start to turn green all around her arm. And you look in the reflection, like the distorted reflection on the car panel, and you see her green She-Hulk form.
Yes.
Next you see she runs off into the woods, passes out, goes into it and then wakes up. She's by a bar, sneaks into the bar, into the bathroom. There's a bunch of Easter eggs on the wall in the bathroom, and there's even, before she goes in there's a little QR code that you can see if you scan that with your phone. They've been doing this with all the TV shows. So if you go back and watch all the Marvel TV shows, there's usually like a QR code. You scan it. You scan this one right before she goes in the bathroom, and you see, or you get access to read the first She-Hulk comic. The first official She-Hulk comic. You read it for free on Marvel's website, along with some other stuff that's there. But then inside the bathroom, there's a bunch of like Easter eggs and details all in there. It's all about, there's a Miss Marvel lightning bolt, even though that show hasn't happened yet, technically. There's Spider-Man. There's the Anarchy symbol, just to name a few. Then there's a bunch of callbacks to a bunch of bands, lyrics of songs all over. There's a ton of stuff. You could probably spend a whole video talking about that. We're not going to get into that. Next, she leaves the bar, and she gets she hulks out again because some guys...
Actually, these very nice four ladies walk in and go,
it's true.
Aw, what happened?
Yeah.
You don't deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
And they start dolling her up, helping her look good because she has blood all over her.
Yeah.
And they think some guy did something to her, but she doesn't really explain it. They clean her up, make her look good, give her a coat, give her shoes, and then she walks out.
Mm-hmm.
And then some.
Yeah, and she called Bruce, so he's
on
probably
the way.
Borrowed a phone to call Bruce.
Yeah.
He's probably on the way. Bunch of guys walk out, start hitting on her, talking to her. She kind of hulks out again to get after him, and then you see Hulk tackle her. Black screen. Instant black screen. So she probably got knocked out or blacked out again. Something. We don't necessarily know. She wakes up, and she's in this beautiful beach house. There's some clothes sitting on the bench, and it's what is it? Led Zeppelin t-shirt. It's probably some clothes left over from Tony Stark, because we find out later on, this is his beach house, which in the basement has a giant lab, super pimped out with Stark tech, the best and brightest that Tony had to offer. We find out that's the lab that Hulk combined his consciousness with Hulk's consciousness and created Smart Hulk, which he talked about in Endgame. So it was during the 5-year blip, Tony built this, gave it to him. They spent time together there during the blip, talking, getting to know each other better, and figuring out the Smart Hulk deal, the whole Smart Hulk thing. That was where it happened, was at that house. But so she was probably in Tony's old room, wearing Tony's clothes. You go out and you see a bunch of Easter eggs, like for Tony and Bruce, because it was decorated by them. So there's like some beachy stuff. You see an Iron Legion helmet, which looks like the one that Ultron had in his very first form after he was created, and comes out in Avengers Tower. It looks like the Iron Legion helmet. That's sitting there. Then in the background of a picture, or of the wall, you see Hulk's like Roman headgear from Sakaar when he was a warrior. The champion of Sakaar. You see his helmet there. So it's like, how did he remembers it and brought it back with him? Like, it's so crazy. It's just hanging on the wall back there. So then she goes in the basement into the lab. We see all the technology. So cool. He explains everything I said. And then you see x-rays of her brain. You see her blood. He describes, we share a genetic trait that allows us to have all this gamma radiation in our blood, and it doesn't kill us. It turns us into the Hulk. And he's like, in fact, your DNA is even slightly different than mine, and I used it, and he is in Hulk form again, and his arm's all better. And he said, I used it, and it healed my arm completely. So we're like, what? She's slightly different than Hulk, and her blood helped heal him, and his blood made her She-Hulk. So it's kind of cool that something in their family genetics made them this way. So probably not everybody would, carry the same stuff. Then there's a whole bunch of training montages, and you see the clip that they released a couple days before the show came out of her with the helmet on, and he's like, "We gotta see what triggers your Hulk form with this," and then a bunch of Stark saw blades start coming at her. It looks like a torture chamber. It's craziness. And then, like I said, training montage, awesome fight scene. Then we see a bar, and Hulk explains, "Me and Tony built this." He was like, "Actually, I built it," and Tony just sat and drank and talked. But then their initials are carved in it. BB for Bruce Banner, TS for Tony Stark. We get hit in the feels all over again. Bruce talks about Tony and how they were there during the blip. And it was like, you get a little sad and nostalgic because you miss Tony. And it's kind of cool to hear about. So during their fight, Hulk brings back the thunderclap, which we have not seen since the very first Hulk movie back in the 2007, 2008. Back then, it's kind of cool to see that. She-Hulk learns it too. She kind of has like a sonic clap, not a thunder clap, but it's pretty cool. She picks it up relatively quick. They have that amazing fight. After the fight, Hulk's like, "I understand if you want to go back to your life, yada yada. You seem to have a better control over this than I do, or I did." And then she goes back to the present day while she's, before she did the flashback. And so then they go and they do the trial, and we see everyone there. We see the trial artist person. We finally see the guy that I was talking about from the company, and he's there. So we're like, okay, so it's the guy from the trailer. All of a sudden, bam, someone breaks down the wall right when she goes to give her closing argument, and it's Titania from the comics. As we know, that's She-Hulk's like #1 villain from the comics. And then her friend's like, "Hey, it's time to do your thing. Gotta Hulk out, And she's like, "Oh, I really like this outfit." Takes her shoes off, and then everyone's like, "Whoa, what's happening?" Titania comes to fight her, and she literally just one punches her, sends her into the wall. She gets knocked out. Then she reverts back to Jen Walters' form, fixes her hair, and she's like, "I'm ready to give my closing argument." And they're like, "Who are you?" And she goes, "I'm Jennifer Walters, attorney at law." And then bam, end credits. It was like, that was the episode. It was such a funny and well done episode, put together so well. There was a lot of cool stuff. It was funny. And of course there was an end credit scene too, where they continue talking about her theories about about Captain America. And it's kind of funny. It's very funny. So yeah. What did you think of the show overall?
I liked it. It was very different than most of the shows they do.
Yeah.
Actually, it was kind of a hybrid between the new Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
And how they've been doing like Loki and all these other real serious. You got Miss Marvel's more not so serious. They kind of merged the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They blended it really well with the serious beats and the funny beats, and then breaking the fourth wall, which was kind of crazy because they haven't done that very much. But yeah, overall I enjoyed it. I'm excited that we get a little bit longer of a show, because before with Marvel it was like 6 episodes, so we actually get like 9 episodes. It's gonna be fun to see this whole show. I like the tone of it, like you said. It's gonna be really fun.
It will be.
But I hope you enjoyed this video, Easter egg breakdown, talking about it, our opinions, things we noticed. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for coming and hanging out.
I enjoyed it.
It was a really fun time. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. We're going to be doing this every week when She-Hulk comes out. And then we have some surprises as well coming beyond the whole She-Hulk thing. Maybe with some other MCU stuff, some other movies. So stick around. Make sure you subscribe to see what that's going to be. It's going to be a fun time. He will be here when it is for Marvel stuff for sure. Maybe Star Wars, trying to talk him into it. Leave some comments if you want to see him stick around. But yeah, that's going to be it, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one. Take care. Later. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Hey, if you want to go ahead and click on these videos here, you can click to subscribe. You can watch the latest video or whatever YouTube is recommending from my channel that you watch.